Marcus Chen had built his life around two things: protecting his daughter and staying invisible. The former Navy SEAL had chosen the remote mining colony of Kepler 442c, specifically because it existed on the absolute edge of civilized space, where Galactic Empire patrols rarely bothered to venture. Here, among the red dust and crystalline formations that stretched beyond the horizon, he could raise Emma in peace. The colony housed maybe 300 souls, mostly human refugees and a handful of other species who preferred the quiet life. Marcus worked the deep mines during the day, his enhanced cybernetic arm making him invaluable for the heavy lifting that even the automated systems couldn't handle. His neighbors knew him as a quiet man who kept to himself, spoke little about his past, and would do anything for his 15-year-old daughter. Emma was everything good that remained in Marcus's world. Brilliant beyond her years, she had inherited her mother's quick wit and her father's stubborn determination. While other teenagers complained about the isolation, Emma thrived on it. She spent her days studying xenobiology through the colony's limited network access, teaching herself 6 different alien languages, and helping Dr. Rodriguez in the small medical facility. The morning that changed everything started like any other. Marcus was suiting up for another shift in the deep tunnels when Emma burst into their small prefab home, her dark eyes shining with excitement. "Dad, you have to see this." She thrust her tablet toward him, displaying a complex molecular diagram. "I've been analyzing the crystal formations in Sector 7, and I think I've found something incredible. The lattice structure isn't naturally occurring. Someone built this." Marcus paused in checking his equipment harness. Emma's scientific discoveries had become a regular occurrence, each one more impressive than the last. The local university representatives who occasionally visited the colony had already tried twice to recruit her for advanced programs in the inner systems. "Built by who, sweetheart?" "That's just it. The geometric patterns match theoretical frameworks for dimensional manipulation technology. Dad, I think this entire planet might be some kind of ancient alien installation. Not just ruins, but something that's still active." The pride in Marcus's chest warred with a familiar protective instinct. Emma's intelligence was a gift, but it also made her stand out in ways that could prove dangerous. The Galactic Empire had strict protocols about archaeological discoveries, especially anything that might represent advanced technology. "Have you shared this with anyone else?" Emma shook her head. "I wanted to tell you first. But Dad, if I'm right, this could change everything. The applications for dimensional manipulation could solve the energy crisis in the outer colonies. It could help millions of people." Marcus studied his daughter's face, seeing so much of her mother in her passionate dedication to helping others. Sarah would have been proud of the young woman Emma was becoming. She also would have understood the danger better than anyone. "Emma, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Don't share this discovery with anyone yet. Give me some time to think about the best way forward." Her expression shifted to confusion, then mild frustration. "Dad, I know you worry about me, but this is important. People deserve to know. I'm not questioning the importance, sweetheart. I'm questioning the timing. The Empire has very specific rules about archaeological discoveries. We need to be smart about this." Emma's tablet chimed with an incoming message. She glanced at it and her face lit up again. "It's from Dr. Chen at the Kepler University. She's responding to my paper on crystalline geological formations. She wants to set up a video call tomorrow." The protective alarm in Marcus's mind grew louder. Academic recognition meant attention, and attention meant scrutiny. In his experience, when the Galactic Empire took interest in something, innocent people had a way of disappearing. "That's wonderful, Em. But let's talk about this more tonight, okay? I really do need to get to work." Emma nodded, though he could see she was already mentally preparing for her conversation with the university professor. As Marcus headed toward the mining complex, he made a mental note to contact his old handler through the encrypted channels he'd hoped never to use again. The day passed in routine mechanical work, but Marcus's mind kept returning to Emma's discovery. His daughter was right about the potential implications. Dimensional manipulation technology could revolutionize space travel, energy production, and countless other applications. It could also represent a strategic advantage that the Galactic Empire would kill to control. By the time Marcus returned home, Emma had disappeared into her research again. He could hear her through the thin walls of their habitat, speaking excitedly in what sounded like Zephyrian as she recorded notes. The dedication reminded him so much of Sarah that it physically hurt. That evening, over a simple dinner of protein rations and hydroponic vegetables, Emma shared more details about her discovery. She'd found evidence that the crystal formations extended deep underground, possibly throughout the entire planetary crust. More disturbing, her analysis suggested they were drawing energy from somewhere, maintaining their structural integrity across what might be thousands of years. "I've been thinking about what you said," Emma told him as they cleaned up, "about being careful with the Empire. I know you don't like talking about your military service, but I'm not naive. Dad, I understand that powerful people sometimes do terrible things to protect their interests." Marcus paused in loading the small dishwasher. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that maybe we should document everything thoroughly before we report it. Make sure the information gets to multiple sources simultaneously. Harder for anyone to suppress or control that way." The tactical thinking impressed him, even as it reinforced his concerns. Emma was smart enough to understand the political implications of her discovery, which meant she was also smart enough to get herself killed if they weren't extremely careful. "That's good thinking, sweetheart. Let's plan this out together, okay? No contact with outside parties until we have a strategy." Emma smiled and hugged him tightly. "I love you, Dad. I know you just want to keep me safe." As Marcus held his daughter, he stared out through their small window at the alien stars scattered across the night sky. Somewhere out there, the vast machinery of the Galactic Empire continued its work of maintaining order through fear and control. He'd spent years believing that distance and anonymity would keep Emma safe from that reality. Now, with her brilliant mind on the verge of a discovery that could reshape the galaxy, Marcus realized that safety had always been an illusion. The only question was whether he could stay ahead of the consequences long enough to protect the most important thing in his universe. The next morning would bring Dr. Chen's video call, and with it, the first step toward a future that Marcus couldn't control or predict. All he could do was prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. The video call with Dr. Chen went better and worse than Marcus had feared. Better because the professor was genuinely excited about Emma's research and offered resources that could help refine her analysis. Worse because she immediately wanted to involve the Imperial Archaeological Commission. "Emma, your preliminary findings are extraordinary," Dr. Chen said, her image flickering slightly on their aging communication array. "But a discovery of this magnitude requires proper oversight. The Commission has protocols for exactly this type of situation." Marcus watched from just outside the camera's range as Emma navigated the conversation with impressive diplomacy. She shared enough information to maintain the professor's interest while avoiding specific details about the extent of her findings. "I appreciate the guidance. Dr. Chen, could you give me a few days to compile my full data set before we bring in the Commission? I want to make sure my analysis is thorough." After the call ended, Emma turned to her father with the expression that mixed excitement with growing concern. "She's right about needing proper resources. But Dad, something about the way she talked about the Commission made me uncomfortable." Marcus had been thinking the same thing. Imperial bureaucrats didn't get excited about archaeological discoveries unless they saw potential military applications. The fact that Dr. Chen had immediately mentioned oversight suggested the Empire already had protocols for controlling dimensional manipulation technology. "What did your gut tell you about her?" Emma considered the question carefully. She seemed genuine about wanting to help me, but there was something else. When I mentioned the energy readings, her expression changed for just a second, like she recognized something specific. The tactical part of Marcus's mind began assembling threat assessments and contingency plans. If the Empire already knew about dimensional manipulation technology, then Emma's discovery wasn't just academically interesting. It was strategically vital. I need to tell you something about my military service, some of it anyway." For the next hour, Marcus shared carefully edited versions of missions that had brought him into contact with Imperial intelligence operations. He described how the Empire controlled information flow in the outer systems, how they eliminated threats to their technological advantages, and how civilians often disappeared when they stumbled across sensitive discoveries. Emma listened in growing horror as her father painted a picture of an organization that prioritized control over everything else, including human life. "Are you saying they would hurt people over this?" "I'm saying they've hurt people over much less." Emma was quiet for a long time, staring at her tablet where her research data scrolled past in endless streams of numbers and theoretical frameworks. When she finally spoke, Her voice carried a determination that reminded Marcus powerfully of her mother. Then, we have a responsibility to make sure this information reaches people who will use it to help instead of control. Marcus felt pride and terror in equal measure. Emma had inherited more than just Sarah's intelligence. She'd inherited her moral courage as well. It was exactly the trait that would get her killed if they weren't extremely careful. Over the next 3 days, they worked together to document Emma's discovery in exhaustive detail. Marcus's military training proved valuable for organizing information in ways that would be difficult to suppress or alter. They created multiple copies of everything, stored in different formats, with redundant backup systems. Emma's analysis had grown more sophisticated as she gained access to additional sensor readings from the mining equipment. The dimensional energy patterns weren't just present. They were actively fluctuating in response to external stimuli. When she'd placed a standard geological scanner near one of the larger crystal formations, the entire network had exhibited what could only be described as curiosity. "Dad, I think it's alive. Not biological, but definitely some form of intelligence." The implication sent chills down Marcus's spine. If Emma was right, then Kepler 442c wasn't just an archaeological site. It was a sentient entity, and they were living inside it. "Have you tried communicating with it?" "I've been working on that. Mathematical progressions, basic physics constants, prime numbers. There's definitely a response pattern, but I can't decode it yet." Marcus stared at the readouts showing energy fluctuations that occurred whenever Emma ran her experiments. The patterns were complex but not random. Something was definitely trying to communicate. "Emma, what do you think it wants?" "I think it's been waiting. The geological evidence suggests these formations have been dormant for thousands of years, but they activated around the same time the first human colonists arrived. Maybe it was waiting for someone with the right technological base to establish meaningful contact." The idea that an ancient alien intelligence had been waiting, specifically for humans, was both thrilling and terrifying. It suggested that humanity might have some unique quality that other galactic species lacked. It also meant that Emma's discovery could fundamentally alter humanity's position in the galaxy. The communication array in their habitat chimed with an incoming priority message. Marcus felt his blood freeze as he recognized the Imperial seal in the transmission header. "Emma, step away from your tablet. Now." The message was brief and politely worded, but its implications were unmistakable. Imperial Archaeological Commission representatives would be arriving on Kepler 442c within 48 hours to investigate reports of significant findings. Colony residents were instructed to preserve all potential archaeological sites and make relevant data available for official review. Marcus's tactical mind immediately began calculating escape routes and defensive positions. 48 hours was enough time to get Emma off-planet if they moved fast. His old contacts in the Outer Rim could provide transport and safe houses, but running would mean abandoning the colony and Emma's research, and any chance of ensuring her discovery reached people who could use it responsibly. Emma was reading over his shoulder, her face pale but determined. "They're coming because of Dr. Chen, aren't they?" "Almost certainly. The question is whether she contacted them directly, or whether they were already monitoring academic communications for keywords related to dimensional technology. Either way, we're out of time." Emma pulled up her research files, her fingers flying across the tablet's interface. "Dad, I need to accelerate the communication attempt. If this intelligence has been waiting for contact, maybe it can help protect itself. And us." Marcus watched his 15-year-old daughter prepare to make first contact with an alien intelligence while Imperial forces closed in on their position. The absurdity of the situation would have been funny if the stakes weren't so impossibly high. "What do you need from me?" "Help me get to the main crystal formation in Sector 7. I need direct physical contact to establish a stronger communication link." Marcus checked his weapon cache and started assembling equipment for what might be their last trip to the mining complex. If Emma was going to attempt first contact, he was going to make sure she had the best possible chance of success. As they prepared to leave their habitat, Emma paused to look around the small space that had been their home for the past 3 years. "Dad, if this goes wrong, it won't go wrong." Emma smiled at his certainty. "How can you be so sure?" Marcus checked his sidearm and activated the combat protocols that he'd hoped never to use again. "Because I've never failed to protect you yet, and I'm not starting now." The journey to Sector 7 took them through the deepest parts of the mining complex, where the crystal formations grew largest and most complex. Emma had rigged a portable communication array that could interface directly with the crystalline structures, while Marcus carried enough firepower to hold off a small army. Both preparations felt equally necessary. The main crystal formation rose from the cavern floor like a frozen cathedral, its translucent surfaces refracting the artificial lights into patterns that seemed almost hypnotic. Emma approached it with the reverence of someone about to make history, while Marcus maintained overwatch from positions that would give him clear lines of sight on all the tunnel entrances. "The energy readings are off the charts," Emma whispered as she connected her equipment to the crystal surface. "Dad, I think it knows we're here." The moment her devices made contact, the entire cavern transformed. The crystals began to pulse with soft bioluminescent light, creating patterns that flowed through the formations like neural activity. The air itself seemed to hum with energy, and Marcus felt his cybernetic arm responding to electromagnetic fields he couldn't see. Emma's tablet displayed streams of data that changed faster than human eyes could follow. But gradually patterns began to emerge from the chaos. Mathematical sequences, physical constants, and what looked like star charts from a perspective somewhere outside the galaxy. "It's trying to show me something," Emma said, her voice filled with wonder. "These are navigation coordinates, but not for anywhere in local space." The patterns shifted, becoming more complex. Now they showed energy flows that reminded Marcus of tactical displays he'd seen during deep space operations. But the scale was enormous, suggesting technologies that could manipulate matter at the planetary level. Emma, ask it about the Empire. She input queries about human civilization, galactic politics, and the organizational structure that governed most of known space. The response came immediately, and its implications were terrifying. The intelligence showed them images of other worlds, other archaeological sites, and other discoveries that had been classified or destroyed by Imperial forces. It had been watching galactic civilization for millennia, waiting for a species that could understand its warnings about the dangers of centralized control over dimensional manipulation technology. "Dad, it's not just communicating with us. It's been trying to contact someone for thousands of years. Every species that achieved spaceflight eventually developed dimensional manipulation, and every species eventually used it to create totalitarian control structures." Marcus studied the data streams, recognizing tactical patterns that reminded him of briefings on Imperial expansion strategies. "It's saying the Empire isn't unique. This is a cycle that's happened before. More than that, it's saying that dimensional manipulation technology inevitably leads to the collapse of galactic civilizations. The power is too great, too tempting. Whoever controls it eventually tries to control everything else." The crystal formations pulsed brighter as Emma continued her communication. New patterns emerged, showing technologies that could neutralize dimensional manipulation weapons, communication methods that couldn't be intercepted, and defensive systems that could protect entire star systems from Imperial control. "It wants to share countermeasures," Emma said, her excitement growing. "Technologies that could level the playing field between the Empire and everyone else. But there's a condition." Marcus felt his tactical instincts activate as he recognized the structure of a negotiation. "What kind of condition?" "Humanity has to prove we won't repeat the same mistakes. We have to demonstrate that we can handle this power responsibly." Before Marcus could ask how they were supposed to prove anything to an ancient alien intelligence, his combat awareness systems triggered emergency alerts. Seismic sensors throughout the mining complex detected incoming aircraft, moving too fast and too quietly to be civilian transports. "Emma, we have company. Imperial forces incoming fast." The crystal formations pulsed urgently, and Emma's tablet displayed what looked like tactical information, troop strength estimates, weapon configurations, and movement patterns that suggested a full military operation rather than a simple archaeological investigation. "Dad, it's not just the Archaeological Commission. This is a strike team." Marcus activated his combat systems and began moving toward defensive positions. "How many?" 47 personnel, including combat specialists and technology acquisition experts. "They're not here to investigate. They're here to secure and control." The intelligence had apparently been monitoring Imperial communications as well as geological formations. It provided real-time updates on the incoming forces, including equipment manifests that made Marcus's blood run cold. dimensional suppression fields, advanced restraint systems, and memory modification technology. The Empire wasn't taking any chances. Emma, can you complete the data transfer? I need at least 10 more minutes for the full technical package. Marcus calculated angles, cover positions, and the likely approach routes for a military force that expected minimal resistance. 10 minutes was an eternity in tactical terms, but he'd held worse positions for longer periods. You'll get your 10 minutes. The first Imperial forces entered the cavern system exactly when the intelligence had predicted. Marcus heard their movement through the tunnel networks, their equipment signatures betraying their positions despite their advanced stealth technology. They were good, but they were also overconfident. The engagement began with Marcus triggering explosive charges that sealed 2 of the 3 main tunnel entrances. The Imperial forces found themselves funneled into a kill zone where Marcus's experience and superior positioning negated their numerical advantage. Meanwhile, Emma continued her communication with the intelligence, downloading technologies that could revolutionize human civilization, while her father fought to keep her alive long enough to use them. Dad, I'm getting countermeasures for their dimensional suppression fields and communication protocols that can't be jammed. Marcus fired controlled bursts that kept the Imperial forces pinned, while he relocated to maintain his tactical advantage. His cybernetic arm allowed him to use weapons that would have been impossible for an unenhanced human, while his enhanced reflexes let him anticipate enemy movements before they happened. But gradually the Imperial forces began to adapt. They had technologies he'd never seen before, and they were systematically eliminating his cover positions. Worse, he could hear them calling for reinforcements. Emma, how much longer? 2 more minutes. The final package is almost complete. The crystal formation suddenly blazed with light, and Marcus felt something change in the cavern's atmosphere. The intelligence was doing something, altering the environment in ways that confused the Imperial sensors and disrupted their coordination. Dad, it's helping us. It's jamming their equipment. Marcus used the confusion to launch a counterattack that drove the Imperial forces back toward the tunnel entrances, but he could see more lights in the distance indicating that the reinforcements were already arriving. Emma, whatever you're going to do, do it now. The communication array emitted a high-pitched tone, and suddenly Emma's tablet contained more information than any human technology should have been able to store. Technologies, star charts, communication protocols, and something else that made Emma gasp in surprise. Dad, it's giving me the locations of other intelligences like itself. There's a whole network of them scattered throughout the galaxy, all waiting for someone who can use their technologies responsibly. Marcus triggered his last set of explosive charges, sealing the cavern entrance just as Imperial forces breached his final defensive position. They had perhaps minutes before the Empire brought in heavy excavation equipment to dig them out. Can we use any of these technologies right now? Emma's fingers flew across her tablet as she searched through the massive data download. Yes, there's a communication protocol that can punch through Imperial jamming. We can get this information to the outer colonies immediately. As Imperial forces began cutting through the sealed tunnel entrances, Emma activated alien communication technologies that broadcast her complete research findings to every human settlement in the Outer Rim simultaneously. The Empire might capture them, but the information was already spreading beyond their control. Marcus held his daughter close as they heard the tunnel seals beginning to give way. They had succeeded in their mission, but the victory might cost them everything. I'm proud of you, sweetheart. Emma smiled as the cavern filled with the sound of approaching footsteps. I love you, Dad. The Imperial forces that breached the sealed cavern moved with the precision of elite military units, but they found only empty crystal formations and scattered research equipment. Marcus had used the final moments before capture to activate one of the intelligence's emergency protocols, creating a spatial distortion that transported him and Emma to a hidden chamber deep within the planetary core. The chamber existed in a space that defied normal physics, its walls seemingly made of the same crystalline material, but arranged in impossible geometric patterns. Emma's tablet continued to function despite their location, displaying readings that suggested they were somehow existing in a pocket dimension maintained by the intelligence. Where are we? Emma whispered, her voice echoing strangely in the crystalline space. Marcus was studying tactical displays that appeared on the chamber walls, showing the Imperial forces searching the empty cavern above them. Somewhere the Empire can't reach us. For now. The intelligence manifested as patterns of light within the crystal walls, communicating directly with Emma's equipment to provide a situation update. The Imperial forces weren't just searching for them. They were systematically destroying the crystal formations to prevent anyone else from accessing the intelligence. "They're trying to cut off the communication network," Emma said, reading the intelligence's messages. "If they destroy enough of the formations, the other intelligences won't be able to maintain contact with this sector of space." Marcus watched Imperial soldiers placing demolition charges around the largest crystal structures. The Empire's response was both predictable and terrifying. If they couldn't control the technology, they would ensure no one else could access it either. The situation became worse when the tactical displays showed additional Imperial ships arriving in the Kepler 442c system. Not just archaeological teams or even military units, but a full battle group including planetary bombardment capabilities. "They're going to sterilize the entire colony," Marcus realized. Emma's communication with the intelligence became more urgent as she sought solutions to protect the 300 innocent people living on the surface. The intelligence provided technological specifications for defensive shields and evacuation systems, but implementing them would require returning to the surface. "Dad, I have to go back up. There are shield generators I can build using the mining equipment, but someone needs to coordinate the colony's evacuation." Marcus studied the tactical situation, calculating odds and available resources. The Imperial forces had overwhelming superiority in numbers and technology. Getting Emma back to the surface alive would require perfect timing and considerable luck. Keeping her alive long enough to save the colony would require a miracle. "What about the other colonies? Did your broadcast reach them?" Emma checked her tablet, accessing communication logs through the intelligence's network. The broadcast reached 47 different settlements in the Outer Rim. Some of them are already implementing the defensive technologies. "But Dad, it's not enough. The Empire is moving to suppress this information before it can spread further." The intelligence displayed star charts showing Imperial forces mobilizing throughout the outer systems. Strike teams were moving toward every colony that had received Emma's broadcast. The Empire was treating her discovery as an existential threat to their control. Marcus made the decision that would define everything that followed. "Emma, I'm going to get you back to the surface. You're going to save as many people as you can. But I want you to understand something. Once we leave this chamber, I won't be able to protect you the way I have been." Emma looked at her father with understanding beyond her 15 years. "You're going to fight them directly. I'm going to do what I trained to do, what your mother would have wanted me to do." The intelligence provided them with equipment that seemed to materialize from the crystalline walls. Advanced weapons that could penetrate Imperial armor. Communication devices that couldn't be jammed. And something that made Marcus's tactical mind sing with anticipation. A complete intelligence package on every Imperial officer in the strike force. "It's been monitoring them since they arrived," Emma said, reading the data streams. Personnel files, tactical preferences, psychological profiles, equipment specifications. Everything you need to turn their advantages against them. Marcus studied the intelligence assessments, identifying weaknesses and opportunities in the Imperial command structure. The strike force commander was experienced but arrogant, used to overwhelming superiority rather than adaptive resistance. His subordinates were competent but had never faced an opponent who understood their capabilities better than they did. The transportation back to the surface used the same spatial distortion technology, but this time the intelligence placed them in multiple locations simultaneously. Emma materialized in the colony's engineering complex, where she could access the mining equipment needed to build defensive systems. Marcus appeared in the Imperial command post, where he could begin dismantling their operational capabilities. The engagement began with Marcus systematically eliminating the Imperial communication network. Using weapons that phased through their armor and targeting systems that predicted their movements, he disabled their coordination capabilities before they understood what was happening. Emma worked frantically to convert mining lasers into planetary defense systems while coordinating the colony's evacuation through communication channels the Empire couldn't access. The intelligence had provided her with technical specifications that turned ordinary equipment into technologies the Empire had never encountered. "Colony evacuation in progress," Emma reported through the secure channel. "Defensive systems coming online in 40 minutes. Marcus was moving through Imperial positions like a ghost, eliminating targets and disappearing before their enhanced sensors could track him. The psychological effect was devastating. Elite Imperial forces found themselves facing an opponent who seemed to know their every move before they made it. The Strike Force commander, Colonel Voss, finally began to understand the scope of the threat. His forces were being systematically destroyed by someone who had access to intelligence capabilities that shouldn't exist. More importantly, the colonial resistance was displaying technologies that represented a fundamental challenge to Imperial supremacy. Pull back to defensive positions, Voss ordered. Request immediate reinforcement from the battle group. Marcus intercepted the transmission and smiled grimly. The commander was reacting exactly as his psychological profile predicted. When faced with unexpected resistance, he would escalate rather than adapt. Emma's defensive systems activated just as the Imperial battle group began orbital bombardment of the colony. Energy shields that shouldn't have been possible with colonial technology deflected weapons designed to destroy planetary installations. More importantly, the shield generators began broadcasting the technical specifications for their construction to every human settlement within communication range. Dad, the shields are working, and the broadcast is reaching other colonies. They're building their own defensive systems. Marcus reached the Imperial command ship by using transportation technology that bypassed their security systems entirely. He materialized on the bridge where Colonel Voss was coordinating the bombardment of innocent civilians. The confrontation was brief and decisive. Marcus had advantages in technology, intelligence, and motivation that made the outcome inevitable, but as Voss died, he activated emergency protocols that would bring the full weight of the Imperial Navy to Kepler 442c. "This isn't over," Voss gasped. "You've just declared war on the entire galaxy." Marcus looked down at the man who had come to murder his daughter and felt no satisfaction in the victory. "No. You did that when you decided my daughter's life was worth less than your control." The intelligence reached out to Marcus through the alien communication system, providing him with a final piece of information that changed everything. Emma's broadcast hadn't just reached human colonies. It had reached other species throughout the galaxy, races that had been suppressed by the Empire for generations. The revolution had already begun. Marcus activated the ship's communication systems and sent a message to every Imperial installation in the sector. "My name is Marcus Chen. You killed my daughter's mother. You tried to kill my daughter. You failed. Now you're going to learn what happens when you threaten a human's family." The message included the complete technical specifications for every defensive technology the intelligence had provided, along with tactical assessments of Imperial weaknesses and coordination protocols for resistance movements throughout the galaxy. As Imperial reinforcements converged on Kepler 442c, Marcus prepared for a war that would determine whether the galaxy would remain under Imperial control or finally break free. Emma was safe for now, protected by defenses the Empire couldn't penetrate. But the real battle was just beginning. The Imperial Navy's response to Marcus's declaration came swiftly and without mercy. 3 Dreadnought-class battleships emerged from hyperspace, their massive forms blotting out the stars as they took position around Kepler 442c. Admiral Caney, commanding from the flagship Dominator, had orders that left no room for interpretation. Eliminate all resistance and secure the alien technology by any means necessary. Emma watched the Imperial fleet deployment from the colony's reinforced command center, her tablet displaying tactical information provided by the intelligence network. The ancient entities had been monitoring Imperial military communications, giving the colonists unprecedented insight into their enemies' capabilities and intentions. "Dad, they're planning to use planetary crackers if the bombardment doesn't work," Emma reported through their secure channel. "Admiral Caney has authorization to destroy the entire world if necessary." Marcus was aboard the captured Imperial command ship, using its systems to coordinate resistance efforts throughout the sector. His message had reached dozens of species and the response had been overwhelming. Worlds that had endured Imperial oppression for generations were suddenly fighting back with technologies that leveled the playing field. "How long until the crackers are in position?" 6 hours. "But Dad, I think I can do something about that. The intelligence has shown me how to use the planetary defense network as an offensive system. If I can modify the shield generators, I can create a field that will disrupt their weapons targeting. Marcus felt pride and terror in equal measure as his 15-year-old daughter proposed single-handedly neutralizing the most powerful weapons in the Imperial arsenal. The girl who had discovered alien intelligence was becoming a strategic asset that could change the course of galactic history. What do you need? Time and a distraction. If you can keep them focused on external threats, I can work on the modifications without them detecting the changes. Marcus studied the tactical displays, identifying opportunities to draw Imperial attention away from the planet's surface. The captured command ship had full access to Imperial communication networks, which meant he could coordinate surprise attacks throughout the system. The first phase of Marcus's distraction began when mining ships throughout the asteroid belt suddenly activated weapon systems that shouldn't have existed. The intelligence had provided technical specifications that allowed civilian vessels to mount defensive systems capable of threatening Imperial warships. Admiral Caney found his fleet under attack from targets that his tactical computers couldn't properly classify. Mining barges were somehow penetrating his ship's shields with weapons that operated on principles his scientists didn't understand. How are civilian vessels mounting dimensional disruption weapons? Caney demanded. His tactical officer struggled to provide answers that made sense. Sir, their energy signatures don't match any known technology. It's as if they're using our own shields against us. Meanwhile, Emma worked to modify the planetary defense network using specifications that pushed human engineering capabilities beyond their theoretical limits. The intelligence guided her through procedures that seemed impossible, showing her how to manipulate dimensional fields with equipment designed for mining operations. Marcus coordinated attacks that kept Imperial forces reactive rather than proactive. Every time Admiral Caney attempted to focus on the planet, another impossible threat would emerge from an unexpected direction. Cargo haulers suddenly became assault ships. Communications satellites transformed into weapons platforms. Even the systems gas giant began emitting energy signatures that disrupted Imperial sensor networks. Dad, the modifications are working. I'm reading quantum field fluctuations throughout the system. The planetary crackers won't be able to target anything accurately. Admiral Caney was beginning to understand that he faced something far beyond a simple colonial rebellion. The tactical situation reports coming from throughout the sector described resistance movements that possessed technologies the Empire had never encountered. More disturbing, these new weapons seemed specifically designed to counter Imperial equipment. Sir, we're receiving priority communications from Imperial Command. Similar uprisings are occurring in 17 different sectors. Fleet Command is requesting immediate tactical assessment of the new threat technologies. Caney stared at displays, showing his forces being systematically outmaneuvered by opponents who should have been helpless. The mining vessels in the asteroid belt were now coordinating attacks that demonstrated tactical sophistication beyond civilian capabilities. Patch me through to the surface. I want to speak directly with whoever is coordinating this resistance. Marcus accepted the communication request, appearing on Admiral Caney's command display with an expression that conveyed absolute determination. Admiral Caney, I understand you want to surrender. Caney's face flushed with rage at the casual dismissal of Imperial superiority. I want to understand what technology you're using so we can reach a reasonable accommodation. The technology isn't the important part, Marcus replied. What's important is that you tried to kill my daughter for discovering something that could help people throughout the galaxy. That was a mistake. Colonel Voss exceeded his authority. The Empire is prepared to offer significant compensation for any harm caused to civilian populations. Marcus smiled, and Caney felt a chill as he recognized the expression of someone who had moved far beyond negotiations. Admiral, you don't understand. This isn't about compensation, this is about justice. The communication terminated just as Caney's tactical officer reported new developments throughout the system. The quantum field fluctuations that had been interfering with targeting systems were intensifying, and worse, they were spreading beyond Kepler 442c to affect Imperial operations throughout the entire sector. Emma had discovered that the intelligence network extended far beyond individual planets. The crystalline entities were connected through dimensional links that spanned interstellar distances. By modifying the defensive systems on one world, She had triggered responses throughout a network that encompassed thousands of star systems. Dad, it's incredible. The whole network is activating. Imperial forces are losing targeting capability throughout this entire spiral arm of the galaxy. Marcus coordinated with resistance movements that were suddenly finding themselves able to fight Imperial forces on equal terms. Worlds that had been defenseless were now protected by shields that could deflect planetary bombardment. Civilian vessels were mounting weapons that could penetrate Imperial armor. Communication networks that couldn't be jammed were coordinating attacks across vast distances. Admiral Caney found himself commanding a fleet that was effectively blind and increasingly vulnerable. His weapons couldn't target accurately, his sensors were being disrupted by quantum interference, and his communication with Fleet Command was being systematically compromised. Sir, Fleet Command is ordering immediate withdrawal from the Kepler 442c system. Imperial forces throughout the sector are reporting similar tactical degradation. Caney stared at the tactical displays that showed his superiority dissolving in real time. Signal all units to prepare for emergency jump to hyperspace. As the Imperial fleet began its retreat, Marcus opened communication channels to every resistance cell in the sector. This is Marcus Chen. The Empire is withdrawing, but this is just the beginning. We've proven that their technology can be countered. We've proven that their control can be broken. Now we finish what they started. Emma watched the Imperial dreadnoughts disappear into hyperspace, their massive forms fleeing before defenses that had been built with mining equipment and alien wisdom. But she understood that their victory had come at a cost that would reshape the entire galaxy. Dad, the intelligence is showing me something. By activating the network, we've triggered responses from entities throughout Imperial space. This is going to become a full galactic war. Marcus considered the implications of total war against an organization that controlled most of known civilization. The Empire would respond with everything they had, bringing the full weight of their military machine to bear against worlds that had been defenseless just days before. Are you ready for that, sweetheart? Emma looked at the displays showing resistance movements activating throughout the galaxy, each one now equipped with technologies that could challenge Imperial supremacy. I think the question is whether the Empire is ready for us. 6 months after the Empire's retreat from Kepler 442c, the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. What historians would later call the Dimensional War had spread through every inhabited system, fundamentally altering the balance of power that had maintained Imperial control for over 1,000 years. Emma had become something she never expected, the architect of galactic revolution. Working with the intelligence network, she coordinated defensive systems across hundreds of worlds while developing technologies that gave oppressed populations the ability to fight back against their Imperial occupiers. Her latest project involved establishing secure communication links between resistance cells, separated by thousands of light years, using dimensional manipulation principles that the ancient intelligences had perfected over millennia. Emma created an instantaneous communication network that the Empire couldn't intercept. Jam or trace? Dad, we're receiving reports from the Vega sector, Emma said, monitoring data streams from across the galaxy. The resistance there has successfully liberated 3 Imperial administrative centers using the shield penetrator designs. Marcus was coordinating military operations from what had become the Revolution's primary command center. The mining colony on Kepler 442c now housed representatives from dozens of species, all working together to overthrow Imperial control of their worlds. The war had evolved in ways that neither side had anticipated. The Empire's technological advantages had been systematically neutralized by weapons and defenses based on dimensional manipulation. But the Empire retained massive advantages in personnel, industrial capacity, and established infrastructure. What's the situation with the Imperial counteroffensive? Emma pulled up tactical displays showing Imperial fleet movements throughout the core systems. They're consolidating their forces around the most strategically important worlds. It looks like they're planning to abandon the Outer Rim and focus on protecting the industrial centers that support their military. The strategy made sense from a traditional military perspective, but it ignored the fundamental change that dimensional technology had brought to galactic warfare. The intelligence network allowed resistance forces to coordinate attacks across impossible distances, striking at Imperial strongholds with perfect timing and detailed knowledge of their defenses. Marcus studied reports from active battlefronts, noting patterns that suggested the Empire was beginning to adapt to the new tactical reality. They're learning. The latest Imperial attacks show better coordination against dimensional defenses. That's because they're using captured technology against us, Emma replied. The intelligence shows me Imperial research facilities where they're trying to reverse engineer our defensive systems. The race between innovation and adaptation had become the defining characteristic of the war. Every technological advance by the Resistance was met by Imperial countermeasures, leading to an escalating cycle of increasingly sophisticated weapons and defenses. Emma's role had evolved beyond pure research into something resembling military command. Her understanding of dimensional manipulation made her uniquely qualified to coordinate the technical aspects of Resistance operations, while her connection to the intelligence network provided strategic insights that no conventional military leader could match. I've been thinking about the long-term implications, Emma told her father during one of their rare quiet moments. Even if we win this war, what comes next? Someone has to govern all these liberated worlds. Marcus had been wrestling with the same question. The Resistance was united by opposition to Imperial control, but the various species and cultures involved had very different ideas about what should replace the Empire's authority. The intelligences have some thoughts about that, Emma continued. They've been watching galactic civilizations rise and fall for millions of years. They say the cycle always repeats. Liberation leads to chaos, chaos leads to consolidation, and consolidation eventually leads back to authoritarianism. Are they suggesting we shouldn't fight? No, they're suggesting we need to build something different. A system of governance that can prevent any single organization from accumulating the kind of power the Empire wielded. The conversation was interrupted by priority alerts from multiple sectors. Imperial forces were launching coordinated attacks against Resistance strongholds throughout the galaxy, using tactics and technologies that suggested they had developed effective countermeasures against dimensional defenses. Emma worked frantically to analyze the new Imperial weapons, her tablet displaying energy patterns that seemed to disrupt the quantum fields that powered Resistance technology. Dad, they've found a way to neutralize our dimensional manipulators. The attacks are succeeding because our defenses are failing. Marcus activated emergency protocols that would spread tactical warnings to Resistance cells throughout the galaxy. But the speed of Imperial advances suggested that many worlds would fall before they could adapt their defenses. How long do we have? Hours, maybe less. The Imperial counter-offensive is moving faster than anything we've seen before. Emma dove into the technical specifications provided by the intelligence network, searching for solutions that could restore the Resistance's technological advantages. But the ancient entities were surprisingly candid about the limitations of their knowledge. The intelligences are telling me something troubling, Emma said. They've never encountered a species that adapted to dimensional technology as quickly as humans have. The Empire's rapid development of countermeasures suggests capabilities they've never seen before. Marcus felt a chill as he understood the implications. You're saying humans might be better at this kind of warfare than other species. I'm saying humans might be better at weaponizing any technology, regardless of its intended purpose. The intelligences designed their dimensional manipulation systems for exploration and communication. We've turned them into weapons of war. The philosophical implications were staggering, but they were interrupted by reports from the front lines. Imperial forces had broken through dimensional shields that should have been impenetrable, capturing Resistance strongholds with minimal losses. Emma worked to develop new defensive systems while coordinating evacuations from worlds that could no longer be defended. The intelligence network provided escape routes that used dimensional transportation to move entire populations beyond Imperial reach. But the process was slow and resource-intensive. Dad, I think I have a solution, but you're not going to like it. Marcus looked at his daughter's expression and recognized the same determination that had led her to make first contact with alien intelligence. What are you thinking? The intelligences can create dimensional barriers that would make entire star systems inaccessible to conventional technology. But activating those barriers would also cut off those systems from the rest of the galaxy permanently. The choice was stark: accept Imperial reconquest or accept permanent isolation. Thousands of worlds would have to decide whether freedom was worth cutting themselves off from galactic civilization. How many systems are we talking about? Emma checked the network data. Every world with active resistance cells, maybe 1,000 inhabited systems. Marcus considered the implications of fracturing galactic civilization into thousands of isolated pockets. Trade would collapse, technological development would slow, and many worlds would struggle to maintain their current population levels without access to interstellar resources. But the alternative was returning to Imperial control, which meant accepting that Emma's discovery would be suppressed and that the species that had fought for freedom would face systematic reprisals. Send the proposal to all resistance commanders. Let each world decide for itself. Over the next 72 hours, as Imperial forces advanced through system after system, the galaxy's inhabited worlds made choices that would define the future of intelligent life. Some accepted isolation to preserve their freedom. Others chose to surrender and accept Imperial authority. A few decided to fight to the end, regardless of the consequences. Emma coordinated the activation of dimensional barriers around worlds that chose isolation, creating pockets of protected space that the Empire couldn't reach. Meanwhile, Marcus prepared for the final battle that would determine whether any part of the galaxy would remain free from Imperial control. The war had become something larger than anyone had anticipated, forcing entire civilizations to choose between freedom and security, between independence and prosperity, between the known dangers of Imperial rule and the uncertain future of isolation. As the Imperial fleet approached Kepler 442c for the final assault, Emma made her own choice about the future she wanted to help create. The final battle for Kepler 442c lasted 18 hours and fundamentally changed the nature of warfare throughout the galaxy. Emma had spent the weeks before the Imperial assault developing something unprecedented, a dimensional weapon that could neutralize Imperial technology without destroying the ships or killing their crews. When Admiral Caney returned with a fleet of 200 vessels, including the Empire's most advanced dreadnoughts, he expected to face desperate resistance from a colony that had exhausted its defensive capabilities. Instead, he encountered something that Imperial military doctrine had never anticipated. Emma's weapon didn't destroy Imperial ships. It transformed them. "All Imperial vessels, this is Emma Chen," she broadcast as the weapon activated throughout the system. "You came here to conquer. Instead, you're going to learn." The dimensional field that Emma had created using the intelligence network didn't just disable Imperial weapons and shields, it also downloaded the complete history of Imperial oppression directly into the consciousness of every Imperial officer and crew member. Suddenly, career military personnel who had spent their lives enforcing Imperial authority experienced what it felt like to be on the receiving end of that authority. Admiral Caney found himself reliving the memories of civilians who had been displaced by Imperial expansion, families torn apart by Imperial resource extraction, and entire species that had been enslaved to support Imperial infrastructure. The experience was overwhelming and transformative. "What have you done to us?" Caney gasped, his voice transmitted across all Imperial frequencies. "I've given you the same gift the intelligences gave to humanity," Emma replied. "The ability to see beyond your own perspective. The ability to understand that your actions have consequences for others." Marcus watched from the command center as the Imperial fleet hung motionless in space, their crews struggling to process experiences that challenged everything they had been taught about Imperial civilization. Some ships began to withdraw immediately. Others remained in position, their crews apparently debating whether to continue their mission. But the most significant change came from the Imperial homeworlds, where Emma's weapon had also been deployed through the dimensional network. Citizens who had lived their entire lives believing in Imperial superiority suddenly understood the true cost of their civilization's dominance. "Dad, it's working. I'm receiving communications from Imperial worlds throughout the core systems. People are demanding answers about the things they've experienced. The Imperial government is losing control of the narrative." Marcus had seen psychological warfare before, but nothing that operated on this scale or with this level of precision. Emma had essentially forced an entire galactic civilization to confront the moral implications of their actions. Over the following months, the Empire began to fragment from within. Worlds that had supported Imperial authority for generations started to question their allegiance. Military units refused orders that they now understood would cause unnecessary suffering. Imperial administrators began implementing policies that prioritized civilian welfare over resource extraction. But the transformation wasn't universal or complete. Some Imperial leaders and citizens rejected the experiences they had been forced to endure, dismissing them as enemy propaganda or alien manipulation. These hardliners consolidated their forces around worlds that refused to acknowledge any moral obligation to the species they had conquered. Emma found herself coordinating not just military resistance but also humanitarian efforts to support Imperial worlds that were transitioning away from authoritarian control. The intelligence network proved invaluable for organizing relief operations and technical assistance for civilizations that were learning to govern themselves. "The intelligences are showing me something remarkable," Emma told her father as they worked to coordinate aid shipments to former Imperial colonies. "This is the first time in their recorded history that a galactic civilization has chosen to reform rather than collapse when faced with fundamental challenges to their authority." Marcus was reading reports from throughout the galaxy, noting patterns that suggested sustainable change rather than temporary disruption. What do they think that means for the future? They're not sure. Every previous civilization either maintained authoritarian control until external forces destroyed them, or they fragmented into isolated communities that eventually developed into new authoritarian structures. "We're trying something different." The something different involved creating voluntary associations of worlds that shared resources and technology without surrendering their independence to any central authority. The intelligence network provided communication and transportation capabilities that allowed these associations to function despite vast distances between member worlds. Emma's role had evolved into something resembling a galactic coordinator, helping to resolve disputes between different associations and facilitating technology transfer between species with compatible needs. Her understanding of dimensional manipulation made her uniquely qualified to maintain the infrastructure that supported the new governmental structure. 5 years after the Empire's final assault on Kepler 442c, the galaxy had settled into a configuration that would have been unimaginable during the Imperial era. Hundreds of voluntary associations governed thousands of worlds, each one maintaining its cultural independence while participating in networks of mutual support and cooperation. The Empire still existed, but only in systems where populations had explicitly chosen to maintain Imperial authority. These worlds were increasingly isolated as their neighbors developed technologies and social systems that offered clear advantages over Imperial control. Marcus had accepted a position coordinating security for the Association of Worlds that included Kepler 442c, using his military experience to help develop defensive strategies that protected member worlds without threatening their neighbors. The work was challenging, but satisfying in ways that his Imperial service had never been. Emma continued her research into dimensional manipulation, but now her discoveries were shared immediately with anyone who could benefit from them. The intelligence network had grown to include not just the ancient crystalline entities, but also human researchers and scientists from dozens of other species, all working together to expand their understanding of the universe. "Dad, I've been thinking about what Mom would have thought about all this," Emma said during one of their evening conversations. Marcus smiled as he considered the question. Sarah would have been proud of Emma's scientific achievements, but she would have been even more proud of the compassion and moral courage that Emma had shown in using her discoveries to help others. "She would have been amazed by your research, but I think what would have impressed her most is that you never lost sight of why the research mattered." Emma nodded, looking out at the stars that no longer represented Imperial oppression, but instead symbolized infinite possibilities for cooperation and discovery. "The intelligences tell me they're detecting similar awakening patterns in other galaxies. What we've started here might be spreading beyond our local group." Marcus felt a deep sense of satisfaction as he contemplated the implications. Emma's discovery had not only freed their galaxy from authoritarian control but might also be inspiring transformation throughout the observable universe. The girl who had discovered alien intelligence in crystal formations had become the architect of galactic liberation. The father who had fought to protect her had helped ensure that her gifts served the cause of justice rather than conquest. Together, they had proven that even the most entrenched systems of oppression could be transformed when confronted by truth, compassion, and the determination to create something better. The galaxy they had helped build wasn't perfect, but it was free. And for the first time in 1,000 years, intelligent beings throughout known space could look toward the future with hope rather than fear. Emma's discovery had changed everything, exactly as she had dreamed it would. But more importantly, it had changed everything for the better exactly as her mother would have wanted.